All right, today we're diving into a really fascinating forensic puzzle. It's all about what happens when the DNA evidence is clear, but the story it tells is anything but.
Okay, picture this. You've got a classic crime scene situation. The suspect's hands, the victim's DNA. He says it was just a handshake. She says, no, it was an assault. Both of those actions could transfer DNA, right? So how in the world is forensic science supposed to tell the difference?
And this really gets to the heart of a huge question in forensics today. It's one thing to know who was there, but the real mystery, the thing that cracks the case, is knowing what actually happened.
DNA profiling is incredibly powerful. I mean, it's the gold standard for telling us who was there. It can link a person to a place, no doubt. But, and this is a big but, it often can't tell us how their DNA got there. It doesn't give us the context. Forensic scientists have a term for this. They call it the activity level. And honestly, that's often the most critical piece of the entire puzzle.
So, okay, what tools do investigators have in their toolkit right now to try and figure out that how? Let's take a look at what they're working with when it comes to identifying where that DNA actually came from. Well, the standard toolkit is pretty good for some things. You can see we've got reliable tests for stuff like blood and semen. No problem there. But here's the kicker. Look at what we can't easily test for. Vaginal cells versus skin cells. Saliva versus vaginal cells. In sexual assault cases, being able to tell those apart is, well, it's absolutely crucial. And right now, the standard toolkit just can't. It's a massive, glaring gap in forensic science. So to try and fill this gap, scientists started thinking outside the box. What if they could find some kind of unique molecular tag, something that could definitively tell them, yep, this is saliva, or this is skin? And that search led them to these tiny, tiny molecules with absolutely huge potential, microRNAs. So what exactly is a microRNA? Well, the easiest way to think about them is like tiny little managers running around inside our cells. Their whole job is to control which genes get switched on and which get switched off. This is what gives different parts of our body their unique identity. The theory here was pretty brilliant, actually. Since every body fluid comes from cells with a different job, each one should have a totally unique microRNA signature. All you have to do is find that signature, and boom, you've identified the fluid. And at first, oh man, it seemed like they hit the jackpot. Take a look at this. Researchers found a specific microRNA marker just for menstrual blood. This chart shows its level over 31 days. And look at those huge, clean spikes. They line up perfectly with the days the participants were actually menstruating. It was a clear, specific, reliable signal. It looked like a total game changer. But then they tried to do the same thing for vaginal cells. And this chart just says it all. What a mess. I mean, look at it. The signal is completely all over the place. It's up, it's down, it's different from person to person. For something to work in a courtroom, you need it to be consistent. You need it to be reliable. And this was literally the opposite of that. Yeah, the researchers themselves basically had to throw in the towel on this one. This quote just nails it. The expression was so inconsistent that it's not suitable for casework. So that promising idea of a molecular tag, well, for vaginal material at least, it was a dead end. Science had to go back to the drawing board. And that new approach was a total pivot. They thought, okay, what if we stop trying to find these tiny, tricky molecules inside the cells and just look at the cells themselves? What if you could teach a machine to tell cells apart just by their physical appearance? Kind of like picking a face out of a crowd. And that's where this amazing technology called imaging flow cytometry, or IFC, comes into play. Honestly, the best way to get your head around it is with this one simple idea. Think of it as facial recognition, but for cells. It's this machine that can snap a picture of thousands and thousands of individual cells, one by one, and measure all these different physical features. So what is it actually looking for? Well, it's looking for these key physical differences that make cells unique. For instance, it turns out vaginal cells are on average way bigger than the skin cells on your hands. They also have different thicknesses. And here's a really clever one. Vaginal cells have a nucleus, but the outermost layer of skin cells on our hands, the ones that are most likely to transfer, don't. The machine even measures how the cells naturally glow under different lasers. You put all that data together, and you get a really distinctive profile for each cell type. Okay, so the theory sounds great, right? But the real question is, does it actually work in a real-world scenario? To find out, researchers set up a mock crime scene to put this new technique to the test. Get this. In their simulation, they took a swab from a person's hand only 15 minutes after a simulated digital penetration. They ran it through the IFC machine, and it came back with this number, 1,381. That's how many cells it identified as being vaginal. We're not talking about a couple of trace cells here. This is a massive, totally unambiguous signal. And when you lay the data out in a table, it's just so clear. Look at the swabs taken right after the simulated contact. We're seeing hundreds, sometimes over 1,000, cells that classify as vaginal. Now compare that to the control swabs, just regular hands with no contact. The number of vaginal cells found there? Almost always in the single digits, sometimes even 0. I mean, the difference is just night and day. And here, right here, is where it all clicks into place. The researchers then went and did a DNA analysis on those exact same swabs. And guess what? The samples that the machine set had a high number of vaginal cells. They came back with a clean, single-source female DNA profile, or a mix that was just overwhelmingly female. And that sample taken 20 hours later after washing hands, very few vaginal cells found, and the DNA, a single-source male profile. The cell evidence and the DNA evidence lined up perfectly. It provides the exact context that the DNA by itself was missing. So you can see, this is way more than just some clever new gadget for the lab. Let's talk about what this could really mean for the future of evidence. The whole point here is that this technology adds objective, scientific context. It finally helps answer that "what happened" question. Finding a couple of skin cells with female DNA on someone's hand? Yeah, that could totally fit the story of a handshake. But finding hundreds or even thousands of vaginal cells? Well, that tells a very, very different story. And it gives a jury real, concrete data to help them figure out which version of events is more likely to be true.
And that really leaves us with a final, powerful thought. Our own cells. They act as a kind of silent witness to our actions. And as science gets better and better at reading that silent testimony, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How is this new level of biological truth going to redefine what evidence and justice even mean inside a courtroom?